Welcome to Colonial Outcasts, the anti-imperialist podcast that your uncle, especially your liberal uncle on this episode, will hate. This episode is about the upcoming DNC and the police violence that is about to go down against anti-war protesters. So we're all about a week out from the Democratic National Convention, where pledged delegates, senators and congressmen, or women from all 50 states, District of Columbia, the territories, and the superdelegates, which are unpledged delegates representing the Democratic establishment, attend the convention and cast their votes to choose the party's presidential candidate. I'm not really sure what the point of the DNC is this year, since the only choice we have is pro-weapons to Israel, pro-cop city, pro-militarized border police, pro-prison Kamala Harris. But the DNC is going to be held as a formality to confirm Kamala as the candidate because, hell yeah, democracy for the win. While we on Colonial Outcasts would never tell you who to vote for, if you say you can't protest Harris, Wolz, and demand action against the war machine and the police state for fear of Trump, you've lost the plot. You will most likely be losing your freedom of speech, assembly, and your right to bodily autonomy eventually. Either way, and you know what? You can still vote for Harris and demand to be heard at the DNC. So my name is Greg Stoker. I'm here with co-host Mark Wayne, and we are joined by friend of the show, Josephine Guilbeault, former U.S. Army intelligence officer turned anti-war activist and organizer. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So before we get started, we're going to just strap in for an intro monologue, just straight up exposition, because there's something happening right now since the Kamala Harris nomination. So before we get started, I just wanted to talk briefly about what I would do to fracture the left in order to break up anti-establishment resistance to creeping fascism. Divide et impera. Three-letter agency information operations stuff. Let's go. Bear in mind, I am a white guy about to talk about doing some horrendous exploitation to divide people, just like a three-letter agency. So first fracture point begins along racial lines. Separate Black voters from Arab voters by weaponizing the history of the subjugation and suffering of Black people in America to downplay the Palestinian genocide. Begin painting Arab voters as single-issue voters. Then we need to box out the white left people out of the conversation. This is easy to do because white privilege is an irrefutable reality. So drill down on statements like these, quote, "Not voting for Kamala or voting for third party is easy for a white man to talk about. You won't be marginalized or subjugated under Trump," unquote. This is effective because it's mostly true. So drill down on that for sure, which brings us to the second fracture point. Gender and LGBTQ rights, separating cis people from LGBTQ plus over the threat of Republican policies, separating women from men and other gender identities over a woman's right to choose. Box people out of this intersectional conversation based on a sliding scale of protected privilege, beginning with white men, then white women, all the way to the trans community, which is by no means a monolith. This will work again because it is based in reality. So third fracture point, celebrate the moral clarity of liberals and paint leftists as dangerous. The narrative should be this: governmental change and progress is slow, deliberate, and incremental. We need Kamala Harris in office so we can start making this change. Leftists want things to get so bad that a revolution happens. If it's dangerous, irresponsible, and unrealistic. If Trump wins, it's because of anti-capitalist radicals. Boom, too easy. We can't afford to be single issue voters. Okay, can't do single issue stuff, and the government's work is done. It's weird how all these things are happening right now. It's right outside of an information operations playbook, and I'm not even sure any of that's at play, but it's kind of uncanny seeing this happen. And I just wanted to point that out, and it's my personal belief that I'm not telling you who to vote for. You can definitely vote for Harris and still demand to be heard. So that's just the preference I wanted to say, recognizing there's a lot of fragmentation happening. It's kind of what the establishment wants, and I'm not sure if it's being perpetrated by them, but it's definitely pro them. So just wanted to point that that out for y'all. And what's your opinion on all of that, you dirty single issue voters? You?
Mark, I'll let you go first.
No, you go for it, Captain.
Okay, well, so wait, let me just get some clarity. Do you think that these, I guess, like fractions that are going to be created on the side of the left is going to be by the left or by the right, or a combination of the two?
I think it's always been a combination of the two. Like, we're our own worst enemies when it comes to like organizing, showing a unified front, staying on task and on target. So, you know, we were since October pretty united over this genocide happening, and now that November's coming along, and there's an alternative to Biden. She's not really an alternative. It'll be the same policy platform and the same support for the ongoing genocide in Gaza and occupation in Palestine and other things we have a problem with under Kamala Harris because her policy is the same. It just seems like there's this mass hysteria and like people are gaslighting themselves into thinking that things will be different, and
Yes.
that's where the fragmentation's coming from.
I actually have experienced this for firsthand. I just want to make it clear that prior to October 7th, and the conversation we were having before this started, I was a conservative and lean more towards the Republican side because of my background in the military. And naturally, the Republicans beefed up the budget for military defense. And so as someone who truly believed in like military defense and I sided on with that. Since October 7th, I've become way more open-minded to what the other side says and their belief systems and so forth. So that brings me to this point now that in this movement, I have been exposed to people who, for most of their lives, have been voting democratically on the Democrat side. And even within this movement, I'm starting to see this divide happening because people are saying, well, Kamala Harris can be the one who saves us, can be the one who changes foreign policy, so forth. And in the same room, people are staring at this person like, do you really believe that? And my opinion about it all is that everyone needs to remember that the vice president of the United States is the second in command. The president is the first chief commander, number one. The vice president is the number two. So if our number two in the last 4 years hasn't been able to change our foreign policy in order for us to not go fight unproductive wars, I truly have no faith that she's going to moving forward. Now, I do understand when I listen to other people talk to me about what these other issues are, like it can't be a single issue that you vote on. You have to consider all the issues that other people are facing, not just, you know, what we're being exposed to in the Middle East. And so that does make me feel like, okay, I need to understand where these people are coming from and what they may be facing and their hardships are facing in order for them to consider voting for her. Or the lesser evil, which is Trump. And people are continuing to leave out the option of Jill Stein, which vote for Jill. I'm not going to say vote for Jill Stein, but I'm saying she at this point might be a better option. So in my opinion, there's definitely a divide already happening. People seem to believe Kamala Harris is the way to go. And I'm just not sure if that's right. She hasn't done anything in the last 4 years.
No, and she was basically like a non-entity politically until Joe Biden started to kind of lose his grip on being able to speak, being able to attend meetings and stuff. But I would like to say one thing about the idea of like Palestine being a single issue voter thing. I fail to see in its entirety how it is a single issue because
Exactly.
Palestinian liberation is a struggle against imperialism, colonialism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, genocide, racism, fascism, rapacious, unregulated capitalism. It's the struggle for like international law, universal human rights and dignity, peace, justice, self-determination, and like truth, So I think it's a little
But
bit
all those
more
things
than
you mentioned are based internationally. Let's talk about how Palestine affects the homeland in like internally, right? For those who don't give a shit about the rest of the world, who don't care about what happens in other countries or how they're devastated. Okay, let's go the selfish route. The issue of Palestine has exposed the neglect of America. It just shows that they don't care about investing any of that tax money for things like, I don't know, rebuilding Maui or
Veterans.
helping the homeless or our veterans or going to healthcare, helping doing the college debt, absolving college debt. So it's again like if you want to be selfish about it and you don't care about Palestinians, fine. Okay, don't care about them. Then let's look at how the Palestinian issue has exposed how they don't care about us. That's the angle we can play with, say, the America First crowd.
well, that
Yes,
also,
absolutely.
and we just saw breaking last night. They have just authorized a 18.6 to $20 billion aid package for armaments to Israel again, and that this is being recorded on August 14th. So again, 20 billion. That's enough to cure homelessness in America. Again, this is like the
That could
third.
rebuild the Flint, Michigan water system. That
Yeah.
could do a
So
lot of things here in the United States. So again, if
20
you
billion
think
is
that
a
this is
lot.
yeah, so if you
yeah.
think this is a single, yeah, like Greg said, this is not just beyond a single voter issue because of the international ramifications on the global South and other countries. It affects the homeland. It goes with the America First narrative if you want to go with the America First narrative.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, I think that's interesting. America First, those are the types of conversations that I've been having with former colleagues, and one specifically just retired out of the military after 30 years. Working at the Pentagon as an advisor in a think tank. And I approached him about this issue because he's taken on such a heavy role of advocating for veterans, especially those who are homeless. And I've been asking him to become more present in advocating for what's happening in the Middle East. And he told me that his focus is more on solving the issue of veterans. And I said, well, don't you see that if we didn't send the billions of dollars to support an ally that's committing genocide, we may have those funds in order to solve the issue that you're trying to solve. But right now, we have a budget that's shrinking for veterans that the Veteran Affairs has brought to light to the congressional staff, and they've completely ignored it before they went home and took a recess. And it's like, we can approve 20 billion to send to Israel to commit a genocide and to fight 10 countries, but we can't even focus on the money that is needed to pay veterans their disability claims, their medical claims, and all these other things, their homelessness, solve homelessness for veterans. So I'm slowly starting to have more of those conversations with people who are advocating for, things that are happening within our communities here, to tell them that it isn't a single issue and this is all connected, and all that money we're sending could really solve most of the problems that we have here at home.
Right. And I think we'll get back to the whole veteran point. I would just like to point out though that they've introduced legislation to give IDF veterans the same benefits as American veterans, which is we don't even need to open up that can of worms. But let's say that Trump does get elected, because that's what they're threatening us with, right? If we don't want to vote, we want to be uncommitted, or we want to vote third party. The boogeyman is Trump, and the one community that would probably be most immediately affected, the worst. I mean, everyone who's like not white, but would be, because they're an ethno-nationalist front, but it would be the Arab Americans. So I think we should give voice to like what a really compelling argument that I just heard yesterday, and we should just hear from that perspective real quick. Let me pull it up.
Thinks Trump is better for Palestine. So let's end that trap of illogic. It's just that Arabs and Muslims can't wake up to hundreds of people being massacred during prayer time and dissociate from the fact that Democrats are the ones in charge. They're the ones sending money to Zionists to kill our families and our friends. So yes, Trump is an immeasurably dumb and violent fascist clown, but that doesn't absolve the Democrats from their genocide. It just doesn't. Being intellectually dishonest is going to lose the Arab and Muslim vote, which is needed in some important swing states. We're highly educated, very rich, and absolutely cunty from our grief. But more than that, we're loud, and we affect culture. So it goes without saying the progressives know that we're right. I would like to remind everyone that there is a world in which this quote-unquote democracy has space for people whose families and friends are being constantly bombed to pressure the administration in power to stop doing it. Kamala's not dumb. She's scouring the internet right now. This what about Trump argument is boring and it's intellectually lazy. And it really asks me to forgo my duty to appeal to public servants currently running for office. While Trump is worse for sure, my posts aren't to educate you on something you already know. The reason I post is to disrupt the notion that I have no room to use my voice to see my politicians serve my community's interests. And seeing that my community is more or less grieving at the hands of senseless murder, ask yourself, are you asking me to vote for the lesser of two evils when we could just pressure the lesser of two evils to stop being evil at all in order to win? I'm not going to vote for someone just to protect you if you're not willing to help me protect me. We've got a few months, so let's assume that everyone here is trying to make this fucking place less psychotic. And it would really help if your Islamophobic ass would stop trying to scare us with this fascist clown. At this point, if you haven't noticed, nothing scares us.
Very good
I
point.
like this guy.
Yeah. I'll
on
link
point.
I'll link that video that in the description so you guys can check it out if you want to rewatch it. So yep. I think the what about Trump boogeyman isn't going to work, and that's the main point. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell anyone how to vote. I'm personally not voting for Harris. You could actually vote for Harris, who is pro war machine, pro cop city, pro national security state, and still protest her policies at the DNC. That's like a basic foundation of democracy. You can still vote for someone and put public pressure on them. So that's why I'm not telling anyone how to vote. But we are talking about this DNC protest because it's coming up and it's probably going to get gnarly.
Yeah, that's why we need all veterans hands on deck.
Are we getting into the 1968 DNC?
Yeah, I was definitely going to. First of all,
let's do that because I'm like, grinding at the teeth right now with the parallels between the 1968 DNC and this DNC. We got Nixon, who is almost like a perfect archetype for Trump, right?
Mhm.
So though Nixon was the boogeyman at the time, right? Wasn't he the boogeyman?
Yeah, no. Okay, but it wasn't just Nixon, though. I mean, it was also during the Vietnam War. But before we open up what the parallels are between the 1968 protests and what's going to happen right now, we know that the establishment is thinking about what happened in 1968, how gnarly it got. And that's why we're seeing headlines like this. So I'm pulling something up from, I think this is the Chicago Tribune. No, this is Chicago Sun-Times. The article is entitled, and this came out 2 days ago. The article is DNC protesters warned by Chicago's top cop, quote, "We are not going to allow you to riot." Superintendent Larry Snelling's tough talk comes amid concerns over how officers will manage protests and potentially respond to the type of chaos that marred the 1968 Democratic Convention and swept through Chicago in the summer of 2020. So apparently a lot of the concerns are that they haven't really adequately defined what constitutes rioting. So the cops are generally going to have a free hand. So he said, "I'm not going to wait until it gets out of control, then try to bring it back in." He said, "The moment it starts, you put an end to it quickly. So we will now allow people to come here and destroy this city." Asked to draw a clear line between rioting and protesting, Snelling told reporters after the event that police are specifically going to crack down on violent actors and vandals. So, but he couldn't say exactly how protesters will be treated if they diverge. And this is what we're going to talk about. If they diverge from an approved route, noting that such issues will be handled on a, quote, case by case basis. So this is the foundation of what we're looking at right now for the DNC protests. And the 1968 was basically motivated by the Vietnam War. It was 3 years into the war. People couldn't imagine that it kept going on that long. And then it ended up going on for like 8 more years or 7 more years. And just to show you some footage, just to really bring home that what we saw in like DC when Netanyahu spoke last month and what we're going to see now literally looks the same. Just the only difference is the cops are more militarized now. So bringing that up.
I think that if whenever I think about the strategy that the DNC, not the DNC had, the Capitol Police had in order to stop the protests from being able to march directly to where the congressionals were meeting at the Capitol. Well, they kept blocking all the different paths. So as we kept walking, they would ride their bikes to the next street, block, ride their bikes to the next street, block. So I anticipate that they're going to have that same strategy, because if you look at the map of the approved route, you can see that they've put us about 2 blocks away from where the DNC is actually going to be happening. But since then, people have realized that we have more people than they have cops. And that's the reality of it. They're never going to be able to bring 25,000 cops, because that's the small end of the expectation of what the DNC, who's going to be going to the DNC to protest. They're not going to be able to get 25,000 police officers there. They would have to call in for the National Guard. So what's going to happen is these people are going to strategically be able to march where the hell they want, because there's not going to be enough cops to stop people. And the way that they did this last time is that as people approached the cops on their bikes, they would block them, and then the crowd would move, and then they'd go to the next road. Well, when you have a crowd that stays there, you have about 40 or 50 to 100 people that stay at that street. Those cops can't move. Mm-hmm. So by the time the march gets to the next street, it's open. So people are strategizing now how they're going to penetrate through this planned route. They're not going to be able to hold these protesters back, because it's against our First Amendment right of freedom of speech. In order to protest to the people we're trying to protest, the goal is for them to see and hear us. They can't stop us from doing that. That's illegal. It's illegal to do that. It's against our First Amendment right. And so people are prepared to penetrate through whatever they're planning on setting up.
Yeah. And I think that's why they have the broad definition of like, what is vandalism? What is rioting? So I think anyone who's not on a approved route is going to get the business. They're going to get the boot. And if they don't have enough cops, they're going to have to start deploying tear gas, which they'll definitely do. They're going to start getting violent, because the second they lose control of the situation and start getting nervous, police get violent. We see it every time. And so we saw it in Washington, D.C., and we saw it in 1968 during the protests. Let me pull up some footage for y'all. And if you're listening to the audio, I will describe what we're looking at. So this is from the National Film Preservation Foundation. This is footage from a compilation of footage from 1968 entitled Social Confrontation, the Battle of Michigan Avenue. So we've got National Guard, we got Jeeps.
People are taking back their country. When we start taking back our country from the 3% that owns the country, you're going to have to decide, are you going to load this thing and use it? If you're not going to load this thing and use it, then you ought to put it down.
So he's talking about the guns. The people are trying to take back the country. This is a Black activist. There's a lot of intersectionality between like the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement happening at the Democratic convention. So he's talking to National Guard troops saying, the people are just here to take back their country from the top 3% that control it. You have a gun. If you're not going to load it, and if you're not going to use it, then put it down.
Yeah.
So here we are. We're seeing people being tear gassed. We have medics on standby. 1968, getting tear gas out of people's eyes with cleansing solution. Literally, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
I know that's what I'm seeing. It's like what he just said really resonated with me. It's like that's what we're saying here. The same thing.
Yeah, and now we've got cops and National Guard in gas masks. We saw an entire like freaking company of police officers in DC with gas masks on with guns. We have the Stop the War signs. Yeah, we have massive rallies. It's the same, blocking traffic. Now we have cops beating people with nightsticks, pushing through with crowds at night with flashlights, and just engaged in, well, violence that we've seen before. I saw, dragging people by their legs. Saw that at the campus protest when they broke up the UT encampment, all while the Democratic National Convention is going on inside. And we're seeing footage outside and footage inside. And the footage inside is old, rich, white people sitting and mingling while massive protests happen outside. So that's an interesting historical artifact, that footage compilation. And wow, nothing changes.
Yeah, so come prepared. I mean, we got pepper sprayed 3 times. And all I got to say is everyone should have their own little individual container of half magnesium, half water in order to spray your eyes out, or if there's a child nearby, because I watched the cops pepper spray children at the July 24th protest. So I don't doubt that they would do something like that again, especially in Chicago. So I'm preparing for the worst. So
yeah,
we should talk about preparation a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into it. First of all, I would like to talk about one thing that we needed to discuss from the last protest that we were all at together in DC is hostile infiltration. So they're going to be what something I'm concerned about. And we saw this during BLM was so the police superintendent of Chicago says we will not tolerate acts of vandalism. There could be hostile infiltration that does the vandalism and gives the cops casus belli for them to intercede violently against groups of people unaffiliated with the vandalism. So I'm not saying don't burn flags. I'm a metalhead who went to some punk concerts growing up, and burning the American flags just like something you do. It's also protected speech, but still it's not great optics for when the police are looking to crack down. And when we saw them burning the American flag, which made international news right next to us when Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking, it was like 2 white dudes.
Suspiciously. Can I bring that up real quick? I'm going to bring up that video real quick.
Yeah.
So actually, it's 3 videos to tell you guys. So this is the guy, the kid right here.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the active school shooter haircut.
Oh.
So this guy looks like a cadet straight out of Quantico from the FBI training ground. So that I have no doubt that, and people have made comments about his necklace that he was wearing. He was wearing a trinket shaped like the state of Israel. That they say that that's a common dog whistle, that they're actually pro-Israeli. Now, what's interesting was there was a guy who tried to stop him, and this guy was not white. In fact, a lot of people say that he may have been Palestinian. So this is this kid, the active shooter, dude. This is Billy. Billy, we'll just call him Billy for now. Billy is trying to burn the American flag, not an Israeli flag, an American flag, right? Lighter's not working. This guy tries to take the American flag away. This guy looks Middle Eastern. So he's trying to stop this white kid from burning the flag. This guy knows that the optics are bad. And this also is very representative of Arab Americans, right? Arab Americans do not burn the American flag. It does not represent them. That's why I am against burning the American flag in these particular protests, because we're here to represent Palestine, right? Palestinians do not come to the United States and burn American flag. Even if we like burning the American flag, which I don't give a shit about flags, if I'm representing Palestinians in a protest, I'm not going to burn an American flag because I'm representing Palestinians. Palestinians do not do that. I've never met a Palestinian who says, I want to burn an American flag on American soil. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I also wanted to say one other thing that's odd about how this guy's get up. He has the keffiyeh tied around his waist.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. A red one too.
Yeah, tied around his waist like it's a sweatshirt. I've only seen like white people do that. Whoa, Jesus Christ, Mark.
No, sorry.
Turn that volume.
That was the wrong video. That was the wrong video. My bad.
Okay, so I've only seen keffiyeh like sweatshirts tied around people's waists like that, and only by white people. So yeah. So infiltration, I think that guy could have legitimately been an infiltrator meant to provide us with bad optics. And he was challenged, but he wasn't challenged enough, in my opinion.
I
There
don't
he
think
is,
that
right
we're
there.
gonna have to. I don't think we're really gonna have to like do too hard of a job convincing the American public that there are infiltrators. Of course, from the January 6th insurrection, there is now like video footage and all these different things coming out that there were people there that had infiltrated during the Black Lives Matter movement. There were people that had infiltrated. It's not like an uncommon concept now that during these large protests that come together, there are people from the other side that infiltrate. And so I'm really not that like too concerned about it. The biggest concern I think I have about it is if they agitate the police enough for them to pepper spray an area where children are. That's where it kind of like draws the line for me. As far as like people coming in to infiltrate. Otherwise, like I don't want people to burn the American flag. Like to your point, Greg, I think it's important for us to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians and what they would want and what they would do. At the end of the day, it is a First Amendment right to burn a flag. And so I'm not going to like, harp on anyone that would decide to do it. That is their right to do. I personally wouldn't do it. I want to believe that my country and that flag has something good to stand for, even though right now it doesn't seem like it. But at the end of the day, what to each his own. But I do believe that the majority of the American public understands that people come in and infiltrate inside of these movements.
Yeah, and the more we bring awareness to this, the more, like, for example, the guy who tried to take the flag back, he was obviously responding to the fact that he knew about the optics. He was aware of this strategy, which is why he tried to take it away. So we do know that people are aware of this infiltration tactic. So let's just amplify that knowledge a little bit with this episode, just so that we're aware. Like I said, the first thing they burned was an American flag and not an Israeli flag. That's what bothered me the most, is that what was caught on camera the most was an American flag burning and not an Israeli flag burning. It just makes sense that you would prioritize burning the Israeli flag first. At the very least, do it first. So this is the guy right here. This is long before the flag burning. This was like 3 hours before that happened, and he's right next to Greg.
Him?
I caught him. I wasn't trying. I was actually just trying to get footage of Greg for the.
Yeah, there he is.
But
and
I happened to catch him. This is the only time I saw him. What's that?
Okay, so he
doesn't have the keffiyeh on at this time.
Nope.
Right.
And look at that haircut, like Greg pointed out.
What's he pushing?
Look at that. Well, I think he has his phone in his hand. He was texting. He had Greg. The target was in sight.
Okay, I mean, there's no.
I'm just joking.
The FBI's on my ass, man. Okay. Anyways, so I think I think now that we talked about hostile infiltration, what have you heard? Because I'm intentionally not plugged into this stuff, because I do think I'm on some sort of like passive list. I don't think anyone's like observing me, but like I am a person of interest. I think all the content creators who post about this stuff are. I don't think anyone like looks at it at this point, but I'm still on it. So I'm not really plugged into any organizing. So what are we looking at the DNC right now? In simple terms, that doesn't compromise operational security.
Like the group I'm organizing right now. I'm organizing a group of veterans to come and show that, people who have served for this country are saying we want a damn ceasefire now. This is not self-defense. And we have a pretty good group that's coming out from all over the country to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. So I'm looking forward to it.
And where do you see your roles in the protest to be as a group?
What are role options?
Well, I mean, like, okay, so we want to mobilize veterans. That's what we're trying to normalize again. So what were if we look at the Vietnam backlash, what were the veterans doing most. They were up in the front lines,
Oh, absolutely.
facing the violent cops. Most of them were in uniform because it was the role of optics.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. I'm hoping that that is the case, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're showing up to be in solidarity with the Palestinians, so we're going to take direction from them. But you know, I give myself direction. So
yeah.
if I want to go up front, I'm probably going to do it.
I did have one video from the protest of you that was last time that was absolutely hilarious. You had the megaphone and you were following around a cop and just blasting a police siren in his ear.
Yeah, I was so pissed.
I actually felt bad for the guy, for the record. I was like, come on, Josephine, man. Come
Do you know
on.
what I'm yelling? Do you know what I'm yelling at the cop right now?
What?
No.
What?
I had just passed by someone who was in the middle of having a heat stroke that was sitting on the sidewalk, and one other person was trying to help them. And I could see that they were like starting to pass out. So I grabbed a jug of water out of someone's hand, dumped it on top of the person's head to try and like cool their body temperature. And I started screaming at this cop, we need to get medics. You need to make a call for medics to get out here. People are having heat strokes. People are falling out. Can you make a call for medics to get out here so that they could start monitoring the situation? She wouldn't even look at me. After that, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, please, like, you need
in an office. That should be a trophy. You need to frame that. Get it gold plated.
At one point, I was so hyped up, I was walking around like this.
At the low ready. With the microphone like, at the low ready.
What's going on?
Ready.
I couldn't
believe you were badass out there, just
and so obviously, you know, my rage took over at that point, and I was like, if you're not going to stop and hear what I'm saying, that there are citizens out here who are passing out from heat strokes, if you're not going to stop and take a second to acknowledge that we need your help, then F off.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are starting to understand that the cops aren't here to protect and serve. They trace their origins back to militarized counterinsurgency forces in Northern Ireland and slave patrols in the Caribbean in Carolinas. And they've always been on the side of the political and corporate class. They have their roots in property protection, scab defense, protecting non-striking workers from striking workers, union busting. And why do people expect them to change? And so one of the things
I can ask myself that, because I think that July 24th was truly like even an awakening for myself to be a part of this, to be the one experiencing, asking these people who I believed at some level would be here to protect us. Like there was a time where when we were in the vicinity of Union Station, where they had blocked us off with all their bikes in the way that they do to hold the line, there was a mother and about a 7-year-old child. The police started pepper spraying. So I said, please, I'm going to escort you out of here. I asked at least 10 police officers who had those bikes holding the line, can you please allow this mother and the child to come through? Things are getting really dangerous here. I want them to get to safety. Not one of them even acknowledged me. Yeah. I was so enraged inside that they weren't going to protect this 7-year-old child in order to protect Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't think so. Absolutely not.
Here's where I think your disconnect is coming from. So you have recently got out of the military. So I think perhaps you still see some like service related kinship between the military and the police, but maybe there is no service kinship. They
don't care about vets. They don't have respect for vets.
No, it's not even that they don't care about vets. They don't care about civilians.
There's no camaraderie. There's no.
Well, hang on. Just let me explain this. It attracts two different types of people. Two different types of people join the military. right out of high school, and people join the police right out of high school. Just like different types of service within the military attract different personalities. Like, so there's this idea that, because, we swore to uphold the Constitution and protect it from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and the cops swore a similar oath, and we're both like service people in the government, that there's some like kinship, that we expect them to behave like us. But let me tell you something. I was in Ranger Regiment, didn't really have rules of engagement, but if I did what cops did, like, and they get away with just like drilling civilians out of nowhere, we get prosecuted. We get sent to Leavenworth. Yeah. So, and it's crazy that special operations units have like tighter discipline, like trigger discipline, than police, who are supposed to like be like policing our own, protecting our own civilians.
Service members are in a combat zone. They're in a combat zone. It's a hostile environment for them. We're talking about on American soil. It's not hostile. Like, these protesters weren't armed. And I want to go back to rules of engagement. I think that's where it mostly stems from, is that we are drilled in the rules of engagement in the military, right? And the NATO rules, the overall universal NATO rules. Cops, they're not drilled. They don't have rules of engagement, which is why they shoot unarmed civilians all the time. In the military, you could get in trouble if a guy could even have an AK-47 in certain circumstances, and you can't even shoot at him unless he's actually aiming it at you. Cops can shoot you if they think that your, coffee can is if they perceive it as being a threat. So just also that alone.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we could talk about this like ad nauseum. And the reporting system for criminal activity is like different in the military than it is the police, because the police control the reporting system. They control the information that gets out. They control how it's presented. In the military, there's like way more third-party oversight. There's like a company commander whose ass is on the line, who's not stuck in that district, who's going to go to like different companies and have his own career. And you have different like units interacting that aren't part of the same like necessarily institutional structure. Then there's like JAG and military tribunals and stuff. And actually, I could argue that the military, for all its war crimes, is better at investigating itself and holding its people accountable than the police. So there's no kinship. It's like, I felt like when I got out of the military, there would be like something there. But then BLM happened, and I was like living in New York, and I was a vet, and they tried to like arrest me violently for like carrying a couch across Houston at like 6 p.m. at night, and it pissed them off because it's the NYPD and they're fascists. And I was like, okay, they're nothing like us. So I wouldn't expect them to be like us. Like I just wouldn't. So, but I kind of appreciate that idea that you're just surprised by it. I've just been out long enough to be like, okay, yeah.
Well, I think you have to understand that I haven't been like an activist for very long. I have been more or less brainwashed to a degree, really up until October 7th. And I haven't really told a lot of people the entire story of how this all even developed for me to finally have be enlightened and wake up to the reality of all of it. But I truly, in my core, I prior to this, believed that everything that I was participating in and doing was to protect and serve my country. And I also believe that the police, the majority of the police, were doing the same. And so it was, for me, another part of this awakening journey, if you will, to even have to come to terms with that. So I'm coming to terms with watching babies being bombed daily. I'm coming to terms with it being our American taxpayer dollars that are funding it, when we have all these other issues, inside our own country. And then I'm coming to terms with the fact that no one's coming to save us except us. We are going to have to save ourselves. And that's just the reality of it. We, the people. That's why in the Constitution, it allows for checks and balances for people to be able to create a revolution against government that becomes corrupt, like the one that we have now. And I realize that these police officers really are just showing up, checking in, and doing whatever they're told to be able to get a small paycheck, if you will, and go back home. Like, they really don't have all that much feeling about it either way. And they don't look at these people that are out protesting as actual human beings. They probably don't even truly know what's going on in the Middle East. They're taking it at face value from Western media outlets, like the majority of Americans are, even though they know it's corrupt. They know it's corrupt, and then they keep watching it. I'll never understand it. But it's all part of this awakening.
It benefits them. And the awakening thing is something I'd like to focus on, because I've been having these views for years. It took me years to get to where I am now politically and conscientiously. And since October 7th, it's been a really rapid wake up for you, and you're still absorbing new information, changing your ideas about things. And this is why I don't want there to be any gatekeeping, right? It's because again, I always harken back to the Vietnam War. 10 years of fucking direct actions, like hardcore protesting, BDS, property destruction, all this stuff. 10 years that war took to end, and people were still waking up year 7 and be like, maybe this isn't the right thing to be doing. And that's helpful. That's helpful to the end goal. So gatekeeping is not something I'm trying to do. So this is why I'm not getting stuck in to this is why I refuse to engage with hey, Greg, who are you voting for? I'm not telling anybody, and I'm not going to tell you how to vote. Personally, I think that voting for Kamala is cognitively dissonant if you're against all of these things. But I'm not going to try to indoctrinate you. Just, you're going to keep learning over time, and maybe you'll see things how I see them, but I'm not going to be didactic about it. So this isn't going to stop anytime soon. Right? So we can't afford to be elitist, to purity test people for are their ideas politically correct enough, or so I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up. Since October 7th, what was it about October 7th that kind of made you start questioning everything so rapidly?
Well, in 2017, I had an assignment with the DIA where I was exposed to
for those who don't know, that's the Defense Intelligence Agency.
The Defense Intelligence Agency, where I was exposed to some of the cases that were coming out of. I was exposed to things in the Middle East, and I started following more local social media platforms and media outlets from the Middle East, from India, from Ireland. I mean, I decided that I wanted to follow on an international level, just news outlets from all over the world. And now we have that at our, you could just literally click and you can see everything that is happening in Ireland. You can click and see everything that's happening in India. There's so much information. So in 2017, I started following these on my own personal social media page, just to get a better understanding of that culture as I was working on these assignments. And during October 7th, the actual footage that I was seeing coming out, I didn't understand what they were saying because I don't understand Arabic. I couldn't read what they were saying because it was in Arabic, but I could see with my own eyes what was happening to these children, to these babies. Every single day was a new baby, was a new dozens of babies, hundreds of babies. I have in my phone, and I'm making a book, actually. I'm in the middle of making a book. It's going to be quite the book. Viewer discretion advised. I have been keeping pictures of every single child that came across my social media that was injured or killed by Israel. I have thousands of pictures on my phone. I mean, I don't need to know what the media is saying. I can see with my own eyes what is happening. And that, as a mother of 4 children, I'm like, no way, this is not self-defense. And then I started having conversations with some of my like former colleagues, people that are still in the military, that are working at the Pentagon, like what the is going on here? And even they were concerned, but are, as you know, limited in what they can do. I guess they're trying from the inside to make a change. Some, as you know, have left, like Major Harrison Mann and Muhammad from the Air Force. 23 years he spent in the Air Force. He got out because of this. He's Palestinian American. And so I just woke up because my eyes were witnessing the truth. And that is why mainstream media has had such a difficult time covering up the truth, because it is so just beneath the surface that if anybody even cares just a little bit to do a little bit of research, they're going to see the truth. That is why the propaganda that you're seeing on mainstream media is so wildly to the other side of reality, because they know even if they just give a little bit of truth, it's going to put the mustard seed in someone's mind to start researching, and then they're going to be hit in the face with the reality that America is complicit in a genocide, and we're really declining as an empire because of it. All our other all the other global powers are rising to the occasion of how the international community is viewing us in order to get them on their side. So economically, they're growing. Security wise, on a global security scale, they're growing. And here we are slowly sinking with Israel. And that's another piece where I have 4 children that need to have a future in this country. What kind of future do they have with a falling empire, with a slew of corrupt leaders who literally are building bunkers in order to save themselves, over just having the courage to say, let's promote peace and diplomacy? They rather build a bunker with all their millions and millions of dollars than just say, we can end this with actual peace. We can give these people human dignity. We can hold accountable people who are causing these like atrocities. And this even goes back to the Bush administration, because I'm telling you right now, who else needs to go to The Hague and be prosecuted for war crimes is George Bush Jr.
And Obama. Because
Obama.
I was in. Oh, Hillary's a big one. Pretty much all of our political elite seem to be complicit in the absolute disgrace that is our war machine. I want to say that was an excellent rant. We may post that as its own video.
She left no crumbs.
The episode as the kids say, left no crumbs.
No crumbs.
So.
Well, just know that I love my children. So.
Yep.
Oh. Well, that's
where that comes from.
Josephine, what was the atmosphere of your colleagues as you were going through this this wake up?
Well, interesting. It's interesting you say that, because the assignment that I was on most recently when I stopped working was working for the Department of Homeland Security. And the team that I was on doing cybersecurity for our critical infrastructure within the country consisted of one person that had a parent from Lebanon, one person that was Palestinian American. Our GS-13 himself was from Pakistan. So I would show up in my keffiyeh. They would say, oh, what'd you do this weekend? I put stickers of Free Palestine all over DC. I wanted to make it perfectly clear to everyone that was in these Zoom meetings that we were a part of daily with DHS that me personally did not agree to what was going on. And I will tell you that for the most part, the people that were on my team specifically and that we interacted with also didn't agree to what was going on. So were they willing to take the step and speak out in the way that you and me are? Probably not. But, out of fear of losing their jobs, I'm sure. I mean, I left a $200,000 a year job. Not very many people are truly willing to lose that kind of money when you've been living with it for, years and years.
Yeah. And, this is why it comes back to gatekeeping. We can't afford to do it because in 3 years, who knows? They might be doing what you're doing right now. If it
Absolutely.
as things continue to get worse, and there's no room for purity testing or barring people from entry, because accomplishing the mission means that you're going to have to freaking do that. You're going to have to put aside your own outrage and ego or whatever, and just accept whatever mission assets you can muster at hand. So,
yeah, I never underestimate planting a mustard seed. I never, ever underestimate what a mustard seed can do when having conversations with people, especially in the community that I've been a part of, which is predominantly Republicans who are patriots. I'm sort of planting these mustard seeds of what is actual patriotism. Patriotism is not adhering to these corrupt leaders. And I go back to January 6th because these people experienced this firsthand who were out protesting for whatever they, felt inside that they wanted to protest. And they were met with corrupt leaders. So this isn't like some new idea to the left or the right. And so that's why it's so important for us to unite together so that we, the left and the right, the people, not the leaders, the people, the left and the right people can come together to really bring this corruption to its knees.
And I just want to say, Captain, you've been very good at what you do with that, as far as reaching out to people in more of the conservative side of the United States, which I feel like more on the left could be doing. Like, again, I have my issues with the right as well, but nevertheless, like Greg said, it has to be an intersectionality. We have to reach out to the constitutionalist and harp on the points that there is a Venn diagram, right? For the people on the conservatives and the people on the left, there is one. And that we're obviously both against tyranny. Fascism is a form of tyranny. We're just using different lingo. The people on the left constantly use the word fascist. Fascist. We have to kind of start using language that the right uses. Tyranny.
Yes.
Fascist is tyranny. It's the same shit. It's just we're using different lingo. And when somebody on the right hears the word fascist, they're thinking automatically, oh, that guy's a communist. And I'm like, if we start using similar terminologies too, we can find that common ground. And then as we create that common ground, we can start debating the nuances of what we disagree with on our political ideologies. But for now, we do need to start reaching out to the people on the right who aren't necessarily pro-fascist in any way and aren't racist either. Maybe they just have some problematic viewpoints, and maybe they have some ignorances that they're not aware of. We can handle all that later. But for now,
this could be said for the side of the left. Maybe they also have some points of views that if they actually heard out the other side, because you can imagine the conversations that I've been exposed to as someone who is more on the conservative side with these people, and I'm hearing their point of views, and I am met with a lot of roadblocks from people wanting to hear my point of view. And so what I want to say to all that is there are a lot of things that we are going to disagree on, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, it's good because disagreements create a dialogue, and a dialogue is what can create change. But what we cannot disagree on, and what we should not disagree on, and what we should hold the line together for is a genocide.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the main theme of our episode, fostering intersectionality. So
100%.
I'd love for the DNC. The DNC is a perfect opportunity for the right to come and protest with people in this movement. I would love to see more conservatives show up, especially conservative veterans show up. Just in July 24th, you saw a whole biker crew, veteran biker crew was there. I mean, hello. People from all over, from different walks of life are showing up because a genocide is the front line. And so I'm hoping the DNC brings out left, right, middle, up, down. I don't care where you are. Just show up.
And I just want to say that's what attracted me to reaching out to Greg before I knew him. Was I saw his first video was him talking about, like, hey, if you're a combat vet and you're not in this movement, you need to fix yourself because we're like a month in or 3 weeks in, something like that. And the way he phrased it was also like, look, if you used to be part of this pro-war crowd, and now you're not. Welcome to the club. We've all done it. It was a very forgiving tone he had on people who used to have a certain view, which is why when I saw that video, I'm like, all right, that's the guy I need to start a podcast.
And I appreciate that, Greg, of course, because I don't want to be ostracized because I didn't know better before. So I appreciate that.
There's zero room for any of that. So I think we gotta get this guy posted for the engagement.
That's
them. There they are. Oh, that's awesome.
They came out there because of Josephine. Where did you see? Tell me the story again. You saw them at a bar.
I had parked like probably about a good mile away from where we were meeting because they had so many road closures. And as I'm walking there with my friend Emma, who's also a veteran, this guy was just hanging out on his Harley, with their leather veteran vest. And I said, hey, you should join us. We're a bunch of veterans that are going to go protest against the wars that are happening in the Middle East. And so we kind of exchanged maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And then I kept walking. Next thing you know, he had showed up with his whole gang. I was like, hell yeah. They were like, I was like, you guys showed up? He was like, yeah, you asked us to. I'm like, hell yeah.
That's beautiful moment. And this is one of my favorite episodes, by the way, what we're talking about. It's so vital. It's so goddamn vital.
Can we just show that clip one more time?
Yeah. Just make sure the sound's off because
it's off. It's off, Greg. God, your sensitive little ears.
There he is. I hug him. That was him.
Yeah, that's
it was
awesome.
Such an organic, genuine.
I didn't know I was recording. I had no idea I was recording. I happened to caught it.
That's the type of people that are joining this movement because, hey, genocide is the front line.
100%.
And I just want to say before we end, I don't have sensitive little ears. We're just trying to up our sound design because a lot of our listeners are audio only. And thank you guys so much. Yeah. Have you checked the Spotify and Apple Podcast analytics? They're not bad. They're not bad. So
Spotify's great. I'm very proud of our Spotify performance.
Yeah. So guys, thanks so much for listening. We're going to be at the DNC. We're not going to talk about what's happening on the action because operational security is still a concern. Show up, get stuck in. You'll be advised on the ground, and that's going to be Thursday, the 22nd. Is the big one. So, and no gatekeeping, no purity testing, just anti-genocide. Okay.
And keep an eye out for infiltrators. Okay. Just keep an eye out for it. Be aware of it. Let's learn from the lesson of DC. All right. Everything's a learning experience. Do AARs, after action reviews with each other and be like, what can we improve on based on our last protest? Always improve. Be like water, as Bruce Lee would say.
Okay, awesome. Oh, our
be
classic.
There, be square.
Be there, be square.
Or be square.
Or be square. And thank you.
And be there.
Be there. Yeah.
And we will be. All right. See you guys next time. Thanks so much for listening. And we'll do a follow-up episode after action review after the DNC here on Colonial Outcasts. Cheers, y'all.